Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so kindly for joining us. I'm delighted to have you all here this beautiful Wednesday evening. Welcome to San Francisco. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple, and tonight I am delighted to welcome Anita Gail Jones for the release of her novel, The Peach Seed. Anita is joined alongside Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. Let's give a hand for both of them. Anita, congratulations, and I'm so glad that you're joining us and we get to celebrate with you. And Margaret, thank you so much for sharing the time with us and celebrating Anita as well. I have very brief business before we get to the heart of the evening. First, I appreciate you all joining us, both here in person and online. We are broadcasting here, hello online people, we are broadcasting from San Francisco. We are on unceded Wimatish-Ohlone land, and we hope that you join us in our pledge to turn land acknowledgement into action by donating either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization every time you hear, or in my case, speak a land acknowledgement. Very brief business. Now's a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. I would say picture taking is encouraged, but you can run that by our authors. Please do check out our full event calendar on our website at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season ahead of us, including the event that you are currently attending, so do check that out. The restroom is behind us. It is available after the event and not during the event for obvious reasons. And it is available for attendees of our event during event time and not like outside regular kind of operating hours, just because it's the one space that our booksellers have that's off the floor, and we try and respect that space for them. But you're also a guest in our store this evening, and we want you to feel comfortable. So thank you for respecting that and being cool about it. We have books from both of our authors available at the front register. You can find them there. I think they'd be happy to sign them afterward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they'd be happy to sign them afterward. So if you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, but you support the authors who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, and they're going to sign them, which is such a special treat, and then you get to read it, and it's yours, which money can't buy that, except when it can. So, so thank you if you're able. We always appreciate it. Thank you so kindly. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two writers who are joining us this evening. First, Margaret Wilkerson Sexton was born and raised in New Orleans, studied creative writing at Dartmouth College and law at UC Berkeley. Her novel, The Revisioners, won a 2020 Janet Heidinger Kafka Prize and an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work, and a George Garrett New Writing Award, among many other accolades. Her debut novel, A Kind of Freedom, was longlisted for the National Book Award and Northern California Book Award, and was the recipient of the First Novelist Award from the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. Her most recent novel is On the Rooftop, a Reese's Book Club pick. She lives in Oakland with her family. Please give a hand for Margaret Wilkerson Sexton. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last but most certainly not least, Anita Gail Jones. Anita Gail Jones, who has been like so hospitable this evening, coming in here with so many goodies for all of us. Just had to say that before I forgot. Thank you. Anita Gail Jones is a visual artist and writer born and raised in Albany, Georgia. Her fine arts degree is from Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. In the 90s, writing and illustrating children's stories led Anita to the oral tradition of storytelling. She worked in San Francisco Bay Area schools as an artist in residence and tailored storytelling programs for libraries, corporations, and private clients. Her novel, The Peach Seed, is the reason we are here tonight. Please give a hand for Anita Gail Jones.
Wow. Thank you. I want to be mindful of disenfranchised and oppressed peoples the world over, and mindful of those intersections where their struggles join the struggles of Black Americans.
Hi, it's so good to be here. I just tore through this book. It's propulsive and yet it's so deep. So you want to spend some time with it because it conjures such deep thought and it's a sweeping book. As our friend Paula said, it's a sweeping novel and yet it's intimate. And it's a book focused on really one family, and yet it feels like it's chronicling the entire African American experience from, you know, when we touched ground in the U.S. And I haven't read a book that's done that. That's really personalized that experience for me, and it's just an honor to be here and to be in conversation about this stunning work.
Thank you.
And I know you want to read a little bit. Do you want to do that now?
Well, I want to thank people. Did I say thank you yet to all of you for coming? It just means everything, that especially when people who aren't in your family show up, and I really appreciate it. I can read now if you want.
That's great.
Okay, I don't do a straight reading though. Because of my storytelling, oral tradition storytelling background, it's just not in me to stay word for word. So it's going to be a combination of reading and process backstory and that kind of thing. I'll do that if it's okay with you. I'm getting nods. I think that's okay. I want to thank my husband before I do anything. This is my husband, Rob, right here. He was my first reader, and he was my last reader. So let's give him a hand. He's also the artist that did the map in the front of the
You're
book.
kidding.
That's Rob's work.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
And in the back, too.
And in the
back,
the floor
yeah.
plan in the back. So we had some fun with
Wow.
that. It pays to have a retired graphic designer in your life. You know? Okay. Albany, a southern city running on country fuel, divided east to west by the Flint River. This southwest corner of Georgia is graced with majestic pecan groves and wildflower carpets buffered by blue skies, a region where flip sides coalesce, modern and antebellum, old growth and new wood, a place of long, deep pain, still refusing forgiveness, yet propelled by joys and triumphs. In many ways, even in 2012, life here is the same as it was 50 years ago, a patchwork of citizens, from farmers to business people to college students, going about their business as any other day, separate and unequal. Fletcher Dukes, he's my guy. Fletcher Dukes lived a few miles south of town in a widening in the road called Putney. Now, if you were passing through Putney and you go a little bit too fast and blink, you might miss it, because it's that kind of place. The sign says unincorporated. There are a lot of those little towns in Georgia. His property has been in their family since before Fletcher was born, back when a black man wasn't likely to own a paltry lot, let alone 7 acres. Fletcher's single-story brick house, which he built, sits on 3 acres. A long driveway shot like a red clay ruler, straight from Sumac Road into Fletcher's front yard. If you parked a line of cars on that long driveway, car number 1 would touch his front porch, and car number 10, his mailbox. His property's back section faced north and included a 4-acre pine forest, stretching out eastwardly in an L shape and wrapping around a large meadow where 2 rusting cars and a pickup truck had become fixtures. Kudzu mushroomed through windshields and dog fennel hugged flat tires. Now, if you talk to Bodie is his grandson, Fletcher's grandson, he's 23 years old. If you talk to Bodie about those rusting cars and pickup truck, he'll tell you it's inventory. Because he and a friend started a restoration business in high school. And Bodie's car was the only one they ever did. And it's a 1969 black Mach 1 Mustang with red racing stripes. and it was the only car they refinished to perfect condition. And if you ask Fletcher about those same vehicles, he'll tell you that's some junk that needs to be off my property. So you can see where they're having a little conversation. It was unseasonably hot for March. Engulfed by diesel fumes, Fletcher paused on his tractor seat, his body jiggling to the old tractor's rhythm. He used a crisp white handkerchief to wipe sweat from his neck, then swerved in a wide turn and maneuvered around each vehicle to mow down what was left of weeds. The tractor parked. He paused in his seat. He was thinking about Bodie. He was tired of talking, and it wasn't working, so he had another plan. He thought he'd send a telegram at first, but you can't do that anymore. And he wouldn't know how to text, even if he had a cell phone. So he decided to write a note in his chicken scratch, and he would leave it under the windshield of the car, because Bodie would never miss it there. So that's his plan. But for now, he took out his pocket watch. A lot of the kids in the family call that Uncle Fletcher's cell phone. And he saw that he had a little bit of time to take a shower before meeting his sister Olga for their weekly run to the grocery store. A little while later, Fletcher pulled his Ford Fairlane into Piggly Wiggly's parking lot. Now, do y'all know about Piggly Wiggly?
I do.
I am shocked at how many people in California know about Piggly Wiggly. They're going away, though. There's maybe 2 or 3 left in Southwest Georgia that I know of, but quite an icon. But they'll live forever in the book. He parked in Piggly Wiggly's parking lot, and he was grumbling to Olga about a red Volvo wagon parked across 3 spaces. It was hitched to a U-Haul trailer. Fletcher said, "Now, whoever this is from Michigan ought to park this rig out on the edge and leave these good spaces up front for local folk." Olga said, "Well, we have our handicap space no matter what," because she was losing her sight slowly. Ordinarily, even she would have more to say about Northern license plates, but since she was going blind, she was getting more and more quiet. And her reticence continued as a pink-faced man joined them, headed toward the front doors. The man said, "Yeah, I've seen her pull in. She act like she owned the place." And Fletcher replied, "Well, I guess they don't teach them how to park up north." And then he said to Olga as he guided her toward the door, "Whoever she is, she can't be all bad. She's got Obama Biden in her windshield." As always, they started in produce, with Olga pushing the cart and Fletcher out front guiding with both the lists. They turned down the liquor aisle, headed for meat, poultry, fish. Fletcher smelled her perfume first. It was a scent he knew very well, but he couldn't name it. A soft, powdery bouquet that instantly made him think of Altovise Benson. He and Olga walked past a tall woman with short, wavy, salt and pepper hair and skin in shades of paper shell pecans. Her head was bowed, reading a wine label. And that way, she was exposing that soft, fine skin at the nape of her neck, very clear. And the women in Fletcher's family called that their kitchen. This woman had a birthmark in her kitchen, a perfect strawberry, almost like a tattoo. So Fletcher put that together with the perfume and those long beaded earrings that she was wearing, and that gave him reason to hurry past. And he was hoping that Olga wouldn't all of a sudden become talkative. They went past the woman. At checkout, he was watching the aisle, thinking about license plates from Michigan. All 6 of Altovise's albums, she's a jazz singer, all 6 of her albums were recorded in Detroit. Olga was chatting with the cashier, one of her former students, and Fletcher was splitting his attention between watching Olga's ATM card in her hand and the aisle, waiting for the woman to come by. and she rounded the corner, pushing the cart away from him. He took a few steps back. He had to see her walk to confirm what he already knew. "I'll be damned," he whispered. His heart was lurching. It was like watching a scene from a favorite movie. He smiled at her long strides, slightly slewfoot. He was only 4 months older, but he seemed like a relic in comparison to her. His granddaughters would say that Altavis was fierce in her crisp, white, oversized shirt. Her denim legs vanished behind a Coke display, and Fletcher flashed on walking hand in hand with her and a giant teddy bear at Doherty County's fair when they were in high school. If Olga only knew how close they both stood at that moment to their very own Altavis. As they fastened seatbelts, Olga said, "Well, that doesn't happen every day." "What you mean?" Fletcher said. "Estee Lauder, Youth Dew. I smelled it in the store on somebody. That's an old-timey perfume. It was everywhere in the 50s and the 60s, but you don't smell it that much anymore." Fletcher stared straight ahead at Michigan license plates, which now took on a completely different meaning. He couldn't explain why he didn't mention Altavis as he drove Olga home. Later, he would look down through the backbone of this day, looking for signs that he had missed. And he would recognize that red Volvo wagon as the calm before a storm called Altavis Benson, walking around his Piggly Wiggly after 52 years. I'll stop there.
It's so cool hearing the first section now that I've read the whole book. It's just like so much more profound and so much more meaning. And I loved your reading of it. I loved hearing it in your voice. Yeah, and so I'd love to hear just to start. I'd love to hear about your writing journey and how you came to produce this work.
The journey for this particular book began in 2007 with a question. It was a question for my dad, Mr. Silas Jones. He was born and raised in South Georgia, actually in Putney, the place that, that we're mentioning, Putney. And he was, in 1921, he was born there, and that's the greatest generation. But because of the color of his skin, he was not able to realize the promises made to the greatest generation. And I wanted to know, how did black men in the South of his generation, how did they manage to be leaders in their homes, their churches, on their jobs, in their communities, when the government, through policies and laws, and the domineering culture considered them less than human? But they managed to do that, and that was a question in my mind. But by the time I formed the question, my dad had already passed away. He died in 1999. And so I turned to fiction for an answer. And that's what The Peach Seed is. It's my answer to that question. Now, when I asked the question, I had not read James Baldwin's No Name in the Streets, 1972. And you can always count on Baldwin for an answer to just about any question you ask. So you'll read it. It's in the front of the book. I put the section that he talks about how black men in the South during that time were living in the teeth of the Southern Terror. That's how he put it. And he said they were heroes, and that no one observing that scene at that time could call them anything else. You couldn't arrive at any other answer. They were heroes more in small ways than large ones, and more in private than public. That was it.
I love that, because we don't often celebrate the small ways that these men would have just survived. I mean, you know, we're always talking about who invented what, and all of these really, ostensibly phenomenal accomplishments, and yet just getting up and going to work every day at that time period must have required so much strength.
Staying alive.
Yeah.
Just staying alive.
Yeah, that's right.
Through the 30s, born in the 20s, coming into your teen years in the 30s, 40s, in the Deep South.
Right.
And my father was not one to talk about the past.
Okay.
He did not watch Roots. Didn't want anything to do with it. And did not, but he wasn't a bitter man. He found ways to be very happy in his life. But he also told amazing stories about his experience as a Black man. And I'd love to share one with you. It's actually from his time in the Army. He was in the Philippines during the war, and he had an opportunity. He had a situation, and he was stationed in Wyoming, and a white woman in the town claimed that a Black serviceman had raped her. And that's all it takes to shut everything down. And they set the woman up in a room, and they paraded all the Black servicemen that were there before her, for her to say yay or nay. And my father was one of those men. And when he told me this, he told us, my sisters and me, we just didn't even know what to say. It was so devastating.
Yeah.
But in his way, he was an amazing storyteller. So he let that sit with us for a minute. He said, but guess what? She picked the wrong man. She picked a guy whose superior officer came forward and said, I know she's lying because I know where this man was at the time.
Wow.
And they threw it out. But that is not always the way it went.
I know.
And the fear that you would feel in that moment that this woman has your life literally in her hands is something. So yeah, just every day.
That's right. Yeah.
Making it through a day.
That's right. And so you talked about the time period when your father was born, 1921?
21.
Okay. And so how did you decide to focus this book on, relatively contemporary time period, 2012?
Right. I had thought that Fletcher Dukes would be my father's age, but I also knew I had some parameters that helped. I knew that I wanted Fletcher to be 18 during the Civil Rights Movement in Albany.
Oh, yeah.
And you know how you are. You're grateful for the stuff you don't have to think about and decide on. So,
right.
Okay. He was 18 in 1960, so that is a blessing. Thank you. Thank you, universe.
Yes.
He was born in whatever, and this is decided. So I had to let go of the idea that he was my dad's age. My dad could actually be his dad because he was 20 years older.
Yeah.
So that's that was what made that decision easy. And from there, I went on with deciding what else would be going on and who else would be in the story. And at that time, the little peach seed monkey, I'm wearing one right now.
Oh.
This is the monkey that started it all.
Oh my gosh.
You can see it later.
Yeah.
But, I had this little monkey because a relative, one of my cousins, had carved it for me and my sister. My sister Betty, she died in a plane crash in 97. But when I was maybe 10 and she was 14, our cousin Paul Hearns came down from Ohio. When your northern relatives visit, it's a huge, it's a big old deal. And for that week or so that they're with you, you start sounding like you're from Ohio.
Uh-huh.
We always called Coke and 7-Up, we called them drinks in the South, but in Ohio they called them pop.
Okay.
So we would be saying that after they left, and our friends would be looking at us like, you sound funny, what are you doing? But he gave us these little monkeys, and the tail on mine broke at some point. And when Betty passed away, we were gathering all her stuff, and she had this little monkey in her jewelry box. And they had been beautiful little charms, but we didn't know what to do with them. When you get something like that, you just put it in a box somewhere, and that's where it lives. And so I took hers out, and I saw that it had rhinestones for eyes. And mine didn't have that. Hers was more special.
Okay.
For some reason. And as I was getting all of the ducks in a row for the story, the little monkey just jumped right in and decided to be a part of the story. And I figured out a way to put it in there. We didn't have this tradition of carving in my own family. We did not have that tradition.
Okay.
Little monkeys just sat in those jewelry boxes all those years. But
Wow.
I invented all of that and made it a talisman for the family.
That's truly amazing. And even the slogan that goes with it, you created all of that. Wow. Wow, I love that. And I want to talk about the language a little bit too, because the language, the descriptions alone in this book are just stunning. But then there's also the dialogue, which is so rich and so authentic. I'm from New Orleans, and I know that it's specific to Southwest Georgia, but some of that overlaps. So I just was like, oh my God, somebody else actually uses this expression. I thought it was just my grandmother. But, so, okay, there are a few examples that I love.
Oh, good. I like it.
Yeah. Death and $1 make you want to holler. This one is good, and I had never heard this one, but it can definitely be apt in sometimes. Blood is thicker than water and will drown you twice as fast. Hadn't heard the second part of that. And also the customs. I love the customs that you reference. Also so authentic to me and so rich. One of them is death sets up its own pecking order based on many things, starting with proximity. How closely were you related, and how close by do you live? And that came up during one of the characters' funerals and deciding who was going to come. And that's so true. I feel like in my own family, those conversations are had just like that. And then similarly, people will not visit you for years, then travel miles for your funeral. So true. I'm always like, but Mom, you didn't even know that person. But so can you talk about where you got some of that? The dialogue, the customs. Did you hear those growing up? Did you do research? Was it a mix?
A mix.
Okay.
Death and $1, I can't even remember. I guess somebody said that. But the one about the one about drown you twice as fast.
Oh, yeah.
What's the first part of it?
Blood is thicker than water.
Yeah, blood is thicker than water. Everybody's heard that one. It was when our mother died. My mother died in 1992. And my sister and I distinctly remember we were going over to the church, I think. And you had to go into East Albany for the church. And East Albany is where a lot of Black folks live. And it's, you have to go through this tunnel that's a railroad thing. And we were going through there, and my sister was talking about, I was having trouble with the whole thing, my mother's death, and talking about stuff. And it was interesting though, she had very little patience for me in the moment. And that's when I came up with that second line.
Really?
Yes, I distinctly remember it. That blood is thicker than water, and then I thought, and it'll drown you twice as fast, because I started seeing all the weirdness that can come out at a funeral or during the practice. Just weird stuff happens when somebody's dead. And then I wrote it down. That was in 92. And I thought somehow I'm going to use that one day. And that's where that came from.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that. And so there's the dialogue that pulls you in and makes you feel like you're really hanging out with this family. And then it's also the characters themselves. I'll never forget Fletcher Dukes. I'll never forget Bo D. And, it hit me like halfway through that I don't think I had read a book where there were so many different perspectives. We have the grandfather, we have a grandson, we have a son, and then we have an ancestor. And it didn't hit me until midway. They're all men. I didn't think about it like that. And certainly, a woman author, you don't usually see a whole book dedicated to the perspectives of men and Black men at that. How did you think to focus it? I'm sure it was intentional to just do men. Okay, how did you decide to come to that? How did you come to that decision? And then also, I'm just curious because the characters feel so much like people I know. How did the characters come to you?
Slowly.
Okay.
Too slowly sometimes. But I knew that I wanted this story to be about men.
Okay.
Because Black men take a beating in this country.
That's right.
In real life and in literature.
That's right.
And I wanted to show a different side of Black men. We have such a long way to go with our fear of the Black body, the Black male body particularly. So, but originally there were two women who had POVs, points of view. Altavis, yes.
Really?
You know that part, yes. Olga and Altavis had points of view.
Interesting. Okay.
But there were too many points of view.
Yeah.
I got that early from someone in the editing process. So I had to take away, and it was hard at first because I didn't know that it was, at that point I didn't know it was going to be only men.
Okay.
So I had to take away the POVs of those two characters, and that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I was smart enough to just take that stuff and dump it in a file somewhere. So I have all of those pages still. And then I had to go back through and make sure nothing was dangling. That all of a sudden you were inside Olga's head because you can't be.
Right.
But then it became very energizing to me. It's like, okay, this is about the men. This is really about the men.
Yeah.
And we only get to know about everybody else if they're in the company of one of these men, because they have the POVs. So that just fed, that was fuel.
That makes sense. And so it makes sense to me that you had written from the POVs of Olga and Altavis because they're so developed. To be peripheral characters, they're so developed. And it's amazing. I feel like I know them just as well, even though we're only hearing from them through dialogue. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I see her writer wheels turning. It's great to be talking to a writer. Really good. Yeah, that was. You're saying something that I had not really thought about. It could be a really good exercise. You have these characters who don't have a POV, but give them a POV.
Yeah.
Write those pages separately because that is when you really get to know them.
Yeah.
And then when they're in conversations, you can say, okay, I have 3 pages on her talking about this. So
right.
That's how you get to know.
That is really cool. And so the book, it's set in 2012, but so much of it focuses on the civil rights movement through flashbacks, and also even focuses on a period centuries ago in West Africa, and those details are very precise. And I wonder, what was the research process for this?
Google Maps.
Yeah.
Google Maps was great for just, you take that little icon and drop him down somewhere and just look around. I have yet to set foot in Africa. But when I was writing, because I hadn't been there and it's not 1700s, it was all invention. So my editor that I worked with, AJ Riddell, she was telling me that those Africa scenes, you have nailed those Africa scenes. And I think it's because you haven't been there.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That happens to me too.
It's pure invention, and you just fall into that world. I don't take any of it for granted because I don't know it.
Right.
But the same thing was true though of Southwest Georgia, because I don't live there anymore. I go once a year, twice a year. I have this pining for it though. I long for the lushness of the trees in this desert place where we live. And I long for the hospitality and the easiness of the folk and the respect for elders and all of that stuff that makes the South special. I'm pining away for it here in Northern California, and I just took that pining and put it on the page.
Wow. That's funny because that happened to me with my first book. I'm from New Orleans, and the book was set in New Orleans. I didn't necessarily go back. I was going back to New Orleans all the time to visit my dad, but I wasn't going back necessarily to do research each time. So there was a neighborhood that I had written about in the first book that I hadn't visited since I was a little child, but I was researching it otherwise. I was reading about it, and like you said, Google Maps, all that kind of stuff. And remember we were driving through that neighborhood, and this was a neighborhood that the feedback I got was this was so, wonderfully described. We were driving through that neighborhood after the book came out, and I was like, oh yeah, it looks just like I said. I know, right?
All good stuff.
Yeah. So, I talk about the depth of this book, and it's really through its just high level of thematic ideas coming through. And one of the ideas that I want to touch on, I saw it as soon as I started the book, and then it was woven throughout, just that not much has changed, or things are frozen in time. And I have a few of my favorite lines that pointed to that. So this is just on the first page. In many ways, even in 2012, life here was the same as it was 50 years ago. And then a little later, families sat on porches under bare light bulbs. Each cozy scene, hanging in darkness like a stage set, seemed frozen in time. And then much later in the book, this is really fascinating to me. This is from Fletcher's perspective. 50 years ago, his generation had sat at counters in order to stand up against bigotry. Back then, he could not see past mass meetings, protests, or voter registration drives. It was enough to make it through a day. He could not envision this present where young folks still sat in segregated clusters, waited on by Black bartenders and waitresses, where public schools were back to being Black. And I just wanted to know, what commentary you're passing with these ideas. It's a book with very heavy social commentary, and yet it's really inserted in such a subtle way that it's seamless. You don't feel like you're being lectured. You feel like you're just reading a story. And Fletcher has truly been through a lot. He was very active in the civil rights movement, so it very much makes sense that this character would be so reflective. And I wanted to know, you do such a great job of passing this commentary in a subtle way. And what ideas were you trying to get across with those references?
In the 90s, I went to my high school, Monroe High School, to do a storytelling program there. And I hadn't been inside the school for years. And I thought I was going to be going to an integrated school. I thought, okay, this is going to be different, because when I was there, it was all Black. I graduated in 72, so it was just beginning, the busing business was starting and all of that. We had 2 white students in our class at Monroe High, and people look at me and they said, what was wrong with them? How did they end up? I don't know. It was busing. So when I went and I saw that the school was back to being Black, I was astonished. I don't know what, it was just amazing to me, because I was removed from it.
Right.
White flight.
That's right, because there was a period where it was integrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is very deep. It's that way now.
Right.
It's still that way.
Right.
And you go and a town, this is all over the country too, I'm sure. Sunday is the most segregated day of the week in the churches. But when I went, and just being in Albany and being in Atlanta, especially like at the airport, Black folks everywhere working in the airport. Almost everybody is Black working in the airport in Atlanta. And then in the service industries in Albany, I was at the hotel one day. I was at Hotel by the River. What's the name of that place? The Courtyard. And you know how they have that really bad carb-loaded breakfast where you make your own waffle? Bunch of carbs that make you sick. And I was over there trying to make my waffle or whatever. And this white woman walked up to me and asked me a question like I worked there.
Okay.
And I tried to be not rude.
I know.
I just looked and I said, what makes you think I'm not wearing a uniform? What makes you think I work here?
Yeah.
And she just said, well, I just thought you worked here. And I just said, I don't. And walked away from it. I was so upset with that lady. I let her get under my skin a little too much. But that is the essence right there of what still goes on a lot. So I really wanted Fletcher reflecting on that, and just to inform people, because living here in California, a lot of my friends have never been to Georgia.
I'm sure.
They've never been to the South. Maybe they passed through it on their way to the Panhandle, on spring break in Florida or whatever. But they have very definite ideas about what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the political stuff is a mess. We all know that. But as Fletcher would say, you can't hold that against every tree and brick in town. There's a lot of beauty still. And folks are going about their lives separate but unequal, like I say. But I really wanted Fletcher reflecting on that, and to give people who have not been to Georgia just some insight. That was kind of what I was trying to do all the way through,
Wow.
is talking to these folk that I know who have never been there, and showing the beauty, and also showing just how much hasn't changed.
Yeah, and I really think that was beautifully done, and it was balanced.
Good.
You know, and there was a line where well, let me just look at my notes. There was a line where it was like there's this trauma, this racial trauma that Altavis and Fletcher have gone through in their work in the civil rights movement, and it drove Fletcher deeper into Southwest Georgia.
Oh, I love the way you're talking about it.
And like propelled Altavis away.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what this reminds me of. And and I wondered too, just personally, because you're from Southwest Georgia, is that what you saw? Did some people stay and some people go based on okay?
And when I went back in 2011, I had the opportunity to go back for the 50th anniversary of the SNCC movement. SNCC being Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and I didn't even know what was going on. I went in March 2011 just to do research. And then while I was there in March, I learned about, the reunion being in June. So, oh boy, gotta buy another ticket, gotta come back. So I met people who worked in the movement.
Wow.
Who were my characters,
Yeah.
really. They did the work that my characters did, and I was talking about the book, and people were saying, yeah, I did that, I did this. And there's a definite conversation around those who stay, and this is true of any town, really. Those who stay and those who leave. But there's an added dimension to it when you include the social part,
Yeah.
the part of working in the movement, and the people who stayed, who worked in the movement, and those who left. And I have Fletcher talking about that at some point. But for me, I was 7 years old in the movement, so I knew about none of that, because our parents held us in a really beautiful place, away from the hatred, away from all of that crap that was going on. My sister, however, Betty, was probably 14 or 15, going on 15, and she wanted to work in the movement.
Okay.
My parents said no. And she was a good girl, so she didn't go against their wishes like a lot of students did. But just having that knowledge and having the lens to look at it from a distance and up close, I felt it was an honor, really.
Yeah.
And to my sister Betty, before she died, she was always talking about the movement in some way.
Really?
She had vivid memories, and I wish I had talked to her more about it. But she said, that's a story that hasn't been told.
Wow. And it's so true, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now there's more and more coming out about it, and you can find, if you do research, you can find more and more books. But when I was there for the SNCC reunion, I had the pleasure of interviewing Charles Sherrod,
Okay.
who was instrumental in the movement then, and he came to Southwest Georgia and never left. He just passed away about a year ago.
Okay.
But he was speaking about the movement, and he said one of the biggest lies the country ever told was when they told poor whites that they were better than blacks. And that is so true. And they, of course, embraced that and believed it, not seeing how they're not treating you so well either.
Right.
But you can build them up by saying, you think you have it bad, but at least you're not black. And so Dr. King was beginning to talk about that more when he died, when he was killed, about poor people uniting across all kind of lines, because that is where you really are going to make a difference. But good luck, because poor whites still thought they were better than blacks.
Right.
And they didn't even want to have anything to do with that. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. You did.
Yeah,
no, you didn't. And yeah, that's deep. And so much of that comes through in the book. Now you talked about AJ Verdell, and I like her. I don't know her personally, but I love the book Miss Chloe. And I understand that she gave advice about the book as you were going through it, as you were writing it. Okay. So I did want to talk about your revision process, because I imagine because the span of the book was so long, 14 years, right? In its creation, I imagine there must have been so much revision.
Oh, yes.
And so can you talk a little bit about what advice you got? What was the hardest thing to change?
One of the first things that AJ did, we worked for 5 years together on and off. And she liked the project from the start. And I didn't know her at the time that I found her. I found her through a YouTube video.
Oh, really?
Of Nikki Finney's acceptance speech. Nikki Finney is a poet. She wrote a book called Head Off and Split.
Okay.
As in fish. Head off and split. And she and AJ were friends, and that acceptance speech is...
I have to watch it.
Unbelievable. You must go and just start typing in Nikki Finney, and then you just get into acts, and it'll just finish the sentence for you, because it's a beautiful...
Wow.
It's the most amazing... Anyway, most amazing acceptance speech. And in that speech, she thanked AJ Verdell.
Oh.
And I didn't know either of these women, these two amazing, powerful black female writers. So I started doing research. Couldn't find anything on AJ. She didn't have any kind of online presence or anything. But I found a line where Nikki said, AJ Verdell teaches revision as an art.
Wow.
And that was at the point where I had taken the book, about 5 years in, I had taken the book as far as I could go.
Yeah.
Key is knowing when you've done that, when you've gone as far as you know how to go, and then go get some help. So here I was in Northern California, Marin County, and I said, I would love to have a black female editor with a connection to the South so that we can speak a shorthand. That was my wish to the universe. Okay, good luck on finding that. But there it came in the form of AJ Verdell through this video that someone sent me an email that had a subject line, "You've got to hear this, sister."
Wow.
And it was true. So long story short, I find her first novel was The Good Negress, 1998.
And I didn't know about her either until Miss Chloe, and I saw that she referenced it there. Okay.
Yeah. So I got a copy of that from Thrift Books or somebody. Abe Books, I think.
Okay.
Which is now Amazon, but back then it wasn't. I got this beautiful, pristine, signed copy, and I devoured it, and I said, I gotta get this woman to help me. So I sent an email through her publisher, Algonquin. 3 months later, she emailed me.
Wow.
Saying, I have a window. They said a window. I have a window. And then she started talking about the characters.
Really?
She started talking about Fletcher Dukes. What might such a man become? I remember that was her line.
Oh my
And then she's talking about all these characters. And I said, yes, but are you for hire? And then she talked about somebody else. She fell in love with the work. And, which was for me like, wow. Because she was the first person outside of my circle who saw something in the work.
Yeah.
And that is no small thing.
No.
Because most of your folk, you can't really, really trust them to tell you the truth. Because they love you too much. They don't want to hurt you.
And
except this guy, he will hurt. He will hurt.
And a lot of them don't know anything. They're
really
like, this is perfect.
It's really good. Yeah. And so you have to get somebody you trust. So I swear we went back and forth across country with email like 3 or 4 times before she actually stopped gushing.
Yeah.
And gave me some prices.
Okay.
And one of the first things that she did was she's just marked up that manuscript and scanned the pages and sent them to me. And I didn't reply right away because it was so many marks.
Yeah.
So many marks. It was like, I thought I could write. And she sent me an email. It just said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I know it looks like a lot, but it's because the work is good."
That's right.
If the work was not good, I wouldn't have anything to say. I said, "Phew, well, that's a relief." First thing she did was dialogue.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
my dialogue was a mess.
That's hard to believe.
It was a mess, Margaret, I'm telling you.
Wow.
Because I was trying to come up with some sort of my version of Negro dialect, essentially.
Yeah.
And in the effort of doing that, I did the characters a great disservice.
Okay.
Because they don't sound like that. They just don't. And I was dropping the end of, the G's at the end of sentences and putting the apostrophes and just, it was grand and literary, I thought. But she said, no. You have them sounding like they don't know anything. These people have PhDs and you have them sounding like they don't know anything. So I had to go through and change all of that. And we came up with kind of a template for rules, not template, rules for how everybody sounds and then specifically how they sound. And she taught me, the biggest thing I think she taught me was synaptic dialogue instead of phonetic dialogue. Because when you try phonetic dialogue, you're going to come up with some weird word that your reader can't pronounce. And they're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's really about how you arrange the words. And each character arranges the words differently.
Wow.
So it rings true for them each time.
It does. And as you said, you're writing about characters that span, the spectrum of education and so, but each one was so authentic. It's kind of hard to believe that one person wrote each POV actually, because they're so distinct. Okay, I know we're getting to Q&A. I just have one silly question.
Oh.
It's not silly. It's not silly.
I like silly.
The song lyrics. Who wrote the song lyrics?
Oh.
I had a feeling they're really good.
Yeah?
Oh my God. I was like, is this a song? Did this come out? And
No, not yet anyway.
Yeah.
I just wish I could write music.
Wow.
They're basically poems.
Yeah.
Lyrics, but
I really love her lyrics, Altavisa's lyrics, because she's a jazz singer and she has 6 albums, so you get to hear some of the music in the book.
She really knows this book. She knows how many albums. And I'm really looking forward to. I haven't written all 6 albums, but that's going to be fun.
Oh, that'll be so much fun.
An album has about, 12 songs in the old days anyway. So it was just too daunting. I came up with a few and then I said,
it was perfect.
That has to be another time.
Yes, it was just
all those songs. But yeah, Altavis is pretty special.
Well, I thought so too. Okay, now do we have questions? I want to open it up for you all. I'm not going to hog this.
I had a question. So it was interesting because I just read in the paper like yesterday, New York Times, or 2 days ago. I don't know why particularly, but they had this thing about advice Toni Morrison gave to her students when she was a teacher at Princeton. And one of the big pieces of advice she gave was like, don't write about yourself, which is like the opposite that like every writer ever says. She's like, don't write about yourself because you're 20 and you don't know anything and you're boring. So pretend you're like a sex worker in New Orleans, or pretend you're like a poet in Scotland or something like that. So she's like, even if it still winds up being autobiographical, at least they like put the characters in other places. Like it wouldn't be so boring for her to read. And I thought that was really funny because I feel like now the pendulum has swung so much of you're only around to write about yourself and your experience and your gender. And so it's so interesting to me that you had the guts to like have all your characters be men. Like, I don't think I could just have the gut. I don't really, like, you talked about it before, but like, how did you feel like you were authentic to like a male experience as a woman?
I wasn't sure, but I trusted in the moment. And I've always been a good observer of everything. I was the one in the family that got whatever the recording device was of the time, the little, what was it, the cassette player or whatever, and I'm the one, starting with the Sears Roebuck reel to reel. I got that when I was 13. I still have it. And they called me Gail in my family. Here she come. Stop talking. She got that recorder on. She got that microphone somewhere. You stop talking. But it was I didn't know it at the time, but that was all groundwork because I was listening to everybody, and I really appreciated the stories. Always appreciated the stories. So as I started developing these men, I was just going back to hearing all of that and listening to what they were saying. Wow. And I came up with a technique of interviewing the characters. On my walks, I would interview them. And I would basically just take dictation. Now, we all know I was talking to myself, but after a while, they take on a life. You know,
absolutely.
They take on a life, and over that many years, especially. And I wrote a piece called The Waiting Room. You can read it. It's on my website. And it's about this room where all of my characters wait to be put into stories. Mm-hmm. So some of them make it out of there, and some of them, bless their hearts, they're still in there. But so in that essay, I talk about that process of listening to the characters and just taking dictation basically after a while. But I didn't really think about it that much because I think if I had thought, what do you think you're doing? You can't be writing from a male point. I would have just stopped.
Yeah.
So I trusted that it was happening. And with each revision, it got stronger and stronger. When I got help, it got even more strong. So that propelled. That was really how I lasted through those many, many, many years. And things just kept getting better and better. And here we are.
Yeah. And I think, to your credit, I knew that you had only written about men, but I was only thinking about that from a literary perspective, like what that was doing for the canon. I never thought anything about it would have been a leap in terms of authenticity.
Yeah.
But that's to your credit because it came off so authentically. And I think, one of the reasons people can't write outside themselves without, critique around it lately is because they truly don't have the exposure. It's like not properly developing a character. It's literary. It's not just like you can't write outside your race. It's truly literary. You did not do the research. You did not have the exposure. You don't know your character as well. But what I will say is, I'll speak for myself. I live with a man, I live, and so he's my husband right here. And so I get a good amount of exposure to men.
That's so true.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, and then we're raised by men.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at it, especially after to be doing it in the absence of the men that it's because my family has dwindled so much. My father was the last of 20 children. Like that, Fletcher has that in common with my dad. He was the last born of 21. Now, when we count them up, there's one we can't find. It's like this. Who is that one that nobody knows about? Probably an outside child. Okay, whatever. But by the time he was born, he was the baby uncle, Mike Fletcher, because his dad had 2 wives, and the older group were all grown and married, and he was the baby uncle. They changed his nephews and nieces changed his diaper. So he had so many memories and stories, but I never knew my grandfather because he was long dead. And now the family has dwindled. My dad's gone, my mom's gone, my sister, all of their siblings, all of those folk are gone, but they live so much in your experience and in their spirit. And that's why this book means so much to me, because I have taken all of that stuff, and this has given me the opportunity and the honor of representing their spirit through these characters. And I would love it if they could be here, but they are here.
That they are. That's right. That's
They are.
beautiful. And I think that's true. Wow.
Thank you, Doreen, for the question. Now, Doreen has to tell you how we met. Please tell the story, Doreen.
Okay, I told you before. Once again, so I'm going on a plane to New York, and I can't go behind me because I'm in steerage. So I have to go up front into business class to throw away my cup. And they see this woman in front of me, and she's got a book in one hand, and she's trying to put her luggage in the thing, and she's like struggling so much. And I'm like, "Can I help you? Can I hold the book while you put your thing in?" She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "You know what? I wrote this book." And I'm like, "No way, really?" And then I'm an English teacher, so I love it that people have written a book and that I can chit chat about it. And so it would have been even better if I had read the book already. That would have been. I know I read it.
Oh,
wow. It would have been the nicest thing ever. But then we got to talking, and so that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much for coming. I love that story.
I know. That's cool. That's really
Rare
cool.
story.
Yes.
Would you talk a little? There are a lot of writers who also are visual artists, or you do ceramics, but other things too, right?
Yeah.
I think I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Would you talk a little bit about how one maybe feeds the other, or did you start mostly in like a visual artist first, and did something kind of come out of that made you more of a writer, or how do they interact? Do they feed the same thing? Do they,
The visual art was definitely, I majored in fine arts, drawing and painting. But I've always written. There's always been this kind of conversation with writing and drawing and painting and all of that. And the beauty of the book is that it's given me a chance to combine all those interests. And I came up with when I was at the Headland Center for the Arts in 2018-19, just before the pandemic, I had a studio there, and we had open house. And you had to display your art, your work. And I was there as a writer. So on Writer's Row, the writers are all looking at each other saying, "What can we do? The visual artists have all this art bling." And what do we have besides sitting at our desks like wax figures pretending to write? And people would put their manuscript pages on the walls, and okay, that's fine. So this was when I was grateful for the visual artists, because I came up with an idea to create a scene from the book.
Really?
I had a tiny little attic room as my studio. It was very small, not even 8 by 10, it was tiny. Yeah. So I had one little strippy table, and I recreated Easter Sunday dinner at Florida's house. And I just had 3 place settings. It was Bodie, Cricket, the 3-year-old, and Fletcher.
Okay.
I bought some plates at the dollar store. They were square plates, like a page. And I wrote little snippets of dialogue on each plate.
That's brilliant.
With a Sharpie. And then I just put up some information about the movement. And I put the, what do you call that, white noise machine? I put it on Cricket so that it sounded like it was in the South. And it resonated with the visitors. People said, "Oh, that's cool. This is a scene from the book, right?" And the dialogue showed conversation. So
that is so cool.
In that way, the visual artist is helping out the literary artist and vice versa. And the other thing is that as I was working on this over the years of my morning walks, when I would interview the characters and try to figure out what to do next, I also saw an opportunity to expand the story across 3 mediums, the screenplay, the play, and the novel. And it started as a screenplay, actually.
Really?
Didn't know what I was doing. Decided to write the novels to get to know the folks. 14 years later, still no screenplay, but I saw a play also, and I saw a stage play, a screenplay, and a novel. So I started, just to amuse myself, I said, okay, the play is like a sculpture, because it's three-dimensional. You can move around in it. You can walk around. The screenplay is like a very textural oil painting. It's all built up and it's big and it's expansive. And the novel is like a pen and ink drawing. So these were just things that I would do to entertain myself, and a conversation between the literary and the visual artist. So they're inseparable to me, and they help each other out. And I'm so grateful because for so many years, I just felt like I didn't have one thing that I could do. You know, I always envied people that had one single vision and passion, and they just jumped on that and rode it into their future. And I was always going, okay, I like to do this, I like to do that, I like to write, I like to do this. But now I have an opportunity to combine them.
That's right.
I'm grateful.
That's amazing.
I got to say, it's not surprising to hear that there was a screenplay in there somewhere too. I shared your surprise that you said you worked so hard to revise the dialogue, because I hear it instantly when and it's not just you haven't heard you read those pages before too. It's just the dialogue really pops. I mean, I really see the people. So maybe that's where some of that came from.
Yeah, maybe.
That's where they were.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Car.
Yeah, I have a question from our online audience.
Oh, nice.
And we can probably take one more question.
Okay, that's good.
after
That
this
sounds
for
good.
time, but Cheryl asks, can you talk about the book trailer?
Oh,
What was it like to create, and what was your vision for it?
we do have a book trailer. I'm glad you mentioned it. And you can go there on the back of your fan if you scan that one on the right, or my other right. That's the right. You can see the trailer. The trailer we produced in last September, at a beach in Marin County, North Beach, and it was the most enchanted day. I mean, it was a full-blown little movie set that a friend of mine helped us. She works in the industry, Annie Spiegelman, and she's an assistant director, and she just made that dream come true. We had the actors, we had a really gifted young black male director, Diodanis Moquette.
Okay.
And we shot one chunky day on North Beach, and it's my therapy.
Yeah.
I listen to the music of it. I play it in the car and just like the radio, because the music is beautiful. We had a very gifted editor who combined two pieces of music to come up with the music you'll hear with the sound, with the trailer. And really, because this is a very stressful experience.
Yeah.
And I get in the car and I put it on, and it helps me.
Yeah.
It helps calm me, and it's a lot cheaper than therapy.
Right.
So, yeah, the trailer, we're really proud of the trailer, and we finally hit 1,000 views.
That's amazing. It seems like the essence of the book, like what called you to write it in the first place. You can feel that when you're listening to it in the car.
Yeah.
Because my first editor told me there's a difference between being a writer and an author, and I didn't understand that. But a lot of that stuff that's stressful is not really about the writing. It's not the creative part. It's that other stuff.
It's the promoting.
Yeah.
That's definitely true.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can like tap into that. I'm thinking about that for myself actually. Like, what can I tap into just to remind myself of the essence of what I'm doing?
That is exactly what the trailer does for me, because it's 1 minute and 52 seconds, but the collaboration was so rich and wonderful. The director, a young black male, does not do slavery stories, for example.
Okay.
And at first he didn't want to do the project, but when I sent him the synopsis and the thing that I had wrote, he said, "Oh, this is a love story." And I like love stories.
Yeah.
So, but it was very energizing to be in a collaboration with other artists and actors and the director, the director of photography, all those folk who took their piece of it and realized it, and to see them in action that day on the beach, and to have that amazing result, 1 minute and 52 seconds of the essence of the story. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed it and have no regrets for doing it. It was amazing.
Wow. And I haven't heard of that. Is that something that you came up with, or had you heard of a book trailer? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I watched a few.
Okay.
It was a pretty big deal about 10 years ago, and then publishers gave up on them because
I
they
see.
didn't think they sold books.
Okay, I see.
So we were on our own to do it because Hope was not of the opinion that sold books, and I understand that, but you get yourself a dream, and then
Yeah.
nobody's gonna take it away.
That's right. Right.
And it was wonderful. We because those folk were strangers to us.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the day, but by the end of the day, we were all good buddies, good friends. So I hope you'll go and look at the trailer and get your friends to watch it too. We want to get a lot of views on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna watch it when I get home.
Good.
Okay, now do we have any other questions? That's such a lovely note to end on, with the creative essence coming through in certain ways, and may we all find this creative essence, and may we all be able to tap into it.
Margaret,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
You just.
I mean, I have like 10 more questions that I didn't get to, so yeah.
That's the way
Thank
this
you.
is, isn't it? Better that than to run out of
That's true.
questions.
That's true.
Thank you. Hi. Can we give another hand for many congratulations to you.
Thank you.
For this book being in the world, and thank you for letting us celebrate with you. And thank you for your thoughtful questions, and also all of you for your thoughtful questions. I'm just here to say thank you once again, and also let you know that we have books available at the front register. You can find them there, and you can come back here to have them signed, and you might find something in between, but the books from these two are at the front. And if you need to know where to go, feel free to ask me, and if not, we will see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I want to say one other thing. I have a guest book. It's kind of like the yearbook for the Peach Seed.
Oh.
And it's circulating. If you wouldn't mind just finding a page and signing it, I'd appreciate it. We also have a sign-up list if you want to be included in our email list. And we respect your privacy. Thank you.
Thank you.